I never thought the person I trusted most would be the one to destroy me in front of everyone. Yet, there I was, standing in the middle of her office party, feeling smaller than I had ever felt in my entire life. It all started when she told me about the company celebration. "You have to come," she said, smiling sweetly. "It'll be fun. My coworkers are dying to meet you." I believed her. I thought it would be a casual evening, a chance to mingle, laugh, and maybe even feel proud of my wife's world for once. I wore my best suit, combed my hair neatly, and walked into the brightly lit hall, trying to act confident. The music was loud, laughter bouncing off the walls. People were chatting in small groups, glasses clinking and the aroma of expensive food filling the air. I looked around for her, and that's when I saw it. She was standing on a small stage near the corner of the room, holding a microphone, her smile dazzling. But it wasn't directed at me. It was calculated, practiced. She scanned the room, and then she said my name. "Everyone, I want to introduce you to my husband," she announced, her voice dripping with exaggerated pride. I felt my chest swell for a second. Then the next words hit me like a cold gust of wind. Well, let's just say he's trying his best to keep up with us." She laughed, the kind of laugh that didn't reach her eyes. The room erupted in polite chuckles, and all eyes were on me. My stomach twisted. I opened my mouth, but no words came. My wife had just humiliated me. On purpose. I forced a smile, trying to laugh it off. "Ha! Very funny," I muttered, but she ignored me, gliding past me like I was a shadow on the wall. For the rest of the night, she continued to belittle me subtly, sharing inside jokes with her colleagues that I wasn't part of, making comments about my ordinary job and simple taste, all while I smiled, nodded, and felt my self-respect crumble piece by piece. As I left the party that night, I walked through the quiet streets, my mind spinning. How could someone I loved so deeply treat me like this? Was it just the alcohol? A moment of thoughtless cruelty? Or something deeper? The next morning, I woke up with a determination I hadn't felt in years. I refused to let her believe she could humiliate me without consequences. I started to observe, slowly, quietly. Her arrogance was her weakness, and I knew it. The more I watched, the more I realized there were cracks in her perfect facade. At first, it was small things. Late nights, mysterious phone calls, meetings she couldn't explain. Then, I noticed her digital life wasn't as private as she thought. Old emails, forgotten passwords, a cloud of secrets she had left carelessly. My heart pounded every time I uncovered something new. I wasn't doing it to punish her out of spite. Well, maybe a little. But more than that, I needed justice, validation, and truth. One evening, while she was out for another supposed networking event, I accessed her office desk, pretending to look for a document. Hidden under piles of reports, I found a folder, thick, organized, and screaming with secrets. Financial discrepancies, personal messages, hidden relationships, and enough evidence to expose her in front of anyone. I held the folder in my hands, my mind racing. The same woman who had humiliated me publicly was now completely vulnerable, and for the first time in months, I felt powerful, not cruel, but alive. I knew I couldn't rush this. Revenge, if it was to be true revenge, needed patience, precision, and a plan that she would never suspect. She had played me like a fool, and I had to make her feel the sting of her own arrogance in the most unforgettable way. That week I watched, I waited, and I observed her routine. Every small habit became a piece of the puzzle. Every lie she told to her colleagues, every exaggerated story, every sly smile she threw at me, everything was a breadcrumb leading to the perfect moment to strike back. And then it hit me. The perfect opportunity would come at her next office party, the one she had been planning for months. She would invite everyone she wanted to impress. She would make sure the spotlight was on her. And that's when I would reveal the truth. I closed the folder gently and smiled to myself. This was no longer about humiliation. It was about justice. about showing her and everyone around her that no one could play with my dignity and get away with it. Little did she know, the man she laughed at in front of her colleagues that night had been quietly preparing for the moment she would regret the most, and that moment was closer than she thought. I learned a dangerous truth. Hurt people often hide behind louder smiles. The woman who'd cut me down wore hers like armor. To break that armor, I needed more than anger. I needed a strategy that would leave no room for denial. I began with the folder. Every page was a confession she didn't know she'd made. Contracts with forged numbers, expense reports padded for vacations, messages that betrayed not only ethics, but people who trusted her. The evidence was clinical, cold, undeniable. I made copies, digital and paper, then locked the originals back where she had hidden them, as if nothing had happened. I had to be careful. If she suspected I'd been inside her things, she could erase everything. So secrecy became my new religion. I started small. The first step wasn't to roar, it was to whisper. I needed to test how she would react. I sent an anonymous tip to a backstage employee who often worked at her events. Not about fraud, too heavy, too fast. Just a casual, "Hey, I heard something odd about today's reimbursements. Might want to look into it." The message did what I expected. It planted a seed. Her face tightened when I saw her checking her phone across the room. For a moment, I watched the confidence crack. At home, every conversation became measured. I learned her schedule, the names of people she trusted, the moments she let her guard down. I stayed late at work, invented errands, found reasons to be where she least expected me. People who knew her only at the office were blind to the private fissures I was mapping, but mapping them was crucial. I hired a quiet ally, a freelancer who could retrieve metadata from emails and shadow accounts without raising flags. He was careful, professional, the kind of person who never asked questions. With his help, I traced the patterns that proved intent. Dated transfers, hidden recipients, a timeline of deceit that matched the stories in the folder. The proof was no longer circumstantial. It was a trail that led directly to her. Still, I refused to rush. Revenge is an art of timing. I watched how she presented herself, how she relished the spotlight, how she framed her life as polished and flawless. She loved public triumphs. She hated being questioned. So I planned to use that stage against her. The next office party floated into my orbit like a red flag. She mentioned it casually, an Instagram post here, a message there, her excitement leaking in small, careless bursts. She would be surrounded by colleagues who admired her. That admiration made them blind. My plan: expose the truth in the very place she expected applause, where her defenses were hollowest. There were practical steps. I secured digital copies of the incriminating files, encrypted them, and stored them on a hard drive I disguised as an old music player. I created a timeline of revelations: what would be revealed first, what would be saved for maximum shock, and how to ensure no one could spin it as a misunderstanding. I crafted a concise message to deliver the evidence. Clear, unemotional, impossible to dismiss. But I also prepared for the human part. I thought about her face when the room shifted from adoration to silence. I imagined the sudden weight of real consequences, questions asked in public, respect evaporating like smoke. I felt a sliver of satisfaction, but beneath it there was something softer, a desire to reclaim my dignity, to show myself that I was more than the butt of her jokes. The night before the party, I rehearsed my speech in the mirror, short, steady, factual. I didn't want theatrics. I wanted clarity. Lies crumble when faced with facts. I would not scream. I would present. I would not plead for sympathy. I would hand over proof. I wanted the world to see the woman she truly was, and for me to stand tall while they watched. At the same time, I kept a guarded softness for the woman we had once been. Memories of better mornings, coffee cups warming our hands, laughter in the kitchen, flickered through my mind like distant frames. Revenge made those memories complicated. I didn't want to annihilate her life. I wanted to take back what she had taken from mine: respect, peace, and the quiet assurance of being seen. On the day of the party, I played a different game. I arrived early, blending into the periphery. I greeted people with practiced calm, a man who had been publicly embarrassed but privately planning his renaissance. Her colleagues glided past, offering polite nods. She worked the room like a conductor, each smile tuned for applause. She didn't look at me once. When the speeches began, she took the stage as expected. Charismatic, rehearsed, untouchable. The timing was perfect. My hand moved toward the disguised hard drive in my pocket. My throat was dry. For a moment the past and future collided. The humiliation still raw, the reckoning imminent. I thought of the people who would be affected, clients, innocent colleagues who trusted her judgment. This wasn't personal spite anymore. It was accountability. I would expose her for what she had done, but I would also give others the chance to decide what to do with the truth. As she launched into another polished anecdote, I stepped forward. The room's buzz dimmed when someone in the back cleared their throat. Heads turned. I could feel the air change, anticipation, curiosity, a ripple moving toward me. I could have backed down. I had rehearsed that too. But the man who had been laughed at would not wither silently again. I took a breath. The moment had arrived. The moment I stepped forward, time slowed. The music faded into a distant hum, and all eyes shifted toward me. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. But my face stayed calm, controlled, focused. She saw me. Finally. Her confident smile faltered for just a split second, then returned. Sharper this time. "Oh, honey," she said through the microphone, her tone sweetly mocking. "I didn't know you wanted to make a speech tonight." The room chuckled lightly. They still thought it was another one of her playful jokes. I almost smiled too, because they had no idea what was about to happen. I took a step closer to the stage. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice even, "I do have something to share. Something important." Her expression tightened. "This isn't really the place." "It's exactly the place," I interrupted softly. My words cut through the noise like a blade through silk. The room fell silent. You could hear the faint clink of a glass somewhere in the back. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small black hard drive. For a moment I held it up, feeling its weight, not just of plastic and metal, but of every sleepless night, every insult swallowed, every wound left unspoken. "This," I said, "contains the truth about the woman standing on this stage, and what she's been hiding from all of you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I heard whispers, confusion, disbelief. She froze, her eyes darting between the audience and me. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her voice trembling now. I turned to face the crowd, not her. "You all know my wife as the hard-working, brilliant woman who led this company, projects, and impressed every investor who walked through those doors." I paused. "But you don't know what happens behind the curtain? The lies? The fraud? The manipulation?" She rushed toward me, grabbing the microphone. "Stop it!" she snapped. "You're embarrassing yourself." I looked straight at her, meeting her eyes, cold, calculating eyes that had once made me feel safe. "No," I said quietly. "You embarrassed me long before tonight. You just didn't think I'd ever speak back." The room was utterly still. People exchanged shocked glances. Some took cautious steps forward. Others whispered into their phones. One of her managers frowned, whispering to another coworker, "Fraud? What's he talking about?" I clicked a small remote in my hand, and the projector behind her flickered to life. The first slide appeared. An email chain. Her name, her signature, her approval of falsified invoices. Then came another slide. Travel reimbursements tied to non-existent meetings. The whispers grew louder. "No, no, no, these are fake!" she cried, snatching the remote. But I had anticipated that. The files were also uploaded to a shared link, already sent to every department head and the company's compliance officer. "Fake?" I asked softly. "Then explain why your fake transactions match your personal bank deposits." Her face drained of color. The confident, untouchable woman who had mocked me in front of her colleagues now looked small, cornered. Her voice cracked. You went through my files? I went through the truth, I said firmly. The same truth you've buried under fake reports and smug smiles. The HR manager, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, stood up. We'll need to see all of this evidence, she said quietly but firmly. Right now. Panic flickered across my wife's face. Wait, please. This is a misunderstanding, she pleaded, but the murmurs in the room had turned into an uncomfortable silence. Everyone was watching her, not with admiration this time, but with suspicion. I took a step back, letting the moment breathe, letting her feel what I had felt at the last party, powerless, exposed, and utterly alone. She turned to me, desperation replacing arrogance. Why are you doing this? I said things I didn't mean that night. I shook my head slowly. You didn't humiliate me by accident. You did it because you thought I was beneath you, because you forgot what it means to stand beside someone instead of above them, and that's why you're standing alone now. The silence stretched. Her co-workers began to whisper louder. A few slipped out of the room, probably to call upper management. One of them, a man who had always seemed a little too close to her, avoided eye contact completely. When the projector turned off, I walked toward the door. I didn't need to stay for the fallout. I had done what I came to do. Justice wasn't always loud. It was sometimes just truth, delivered quietly but publicly. As I reached the exit, I heard her voice break behind me. Wait, please! We can fix this! I paused, turned halfway, looked at her. I fixed it, I said, by ending the lie. Then I walked out, leaving her surrounded by the very people who had once applauded her. Outside, the night air hit my face like freedom. For the first time in months, I felt light, like I could breathe again. I didn't destroy her. She destroyed herself. I just gave the truth a microphone. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over yet. Her downfall had just begun. And sometimes, the worst revenge isn't the public exposure. It's what happens after everyone walks away. The next morning, my phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from co-workers, friends, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. They had all seen the video. Yes, the video. Someone had recorded the entire confrontation at the party and uploaded it online. Within hours, it spread like wildfire across social media and even reached the company's internal forums. My wife's name was everywhere, but not in the way she was used to. The headlines weren't flattering. Top executive exposed for fraud by her own husband. Office party turns into public meltdown. I stared at the screen, emotionless. I didn't share it. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. The truth had its own voice now, and it was louder than anything I could have said. Later that afternoon, she came home. I heard the door open slowly, cautiously, like she was entering someone else's house. She wasn't wearing her usual confident smile. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked human again, fragile. "Can we talk?" she whispered. I didn't answer right away. I just sat at the kitchen table, the same place where she used to sit every morning, scrolling through her phone while ignoring me. The silence stretched. "I didn't mean to humiliate you," she said softly. "It was just a joke. I didn't think—" I cut her off gently. "You never think about anyone but yourself." Her lip trembled. "I made mistakes, yes, but you didn't have to destroy me like that." I looked up at her, meeting her eyes. "Destroy you? No. I just gave you what you gave me. Except I didn't laugh while doing it." Tears spilled down her cheeks. For a second, part of me almost pitied her. Almost. "Do you know what it's like?" I said quietly. "To be laughed at by the person you love? To stand there while they make you feel small just to look taller in front of others?" You turned me into a punchline. She said nothing, just silence and shame. "I worked hard for you," I continued. "Every sacrifice, every late night because I believed in us. But you didn't want a husband. You wanted a trophy you could polish when it suited you and hide when it didn't." She sat down across from me, Her hands shook as she tried to find words. "They suspended me," she whispered. "The board called an emergency meeting. HR is investigating. They said if the reports are true, I could lose my job." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. After a long pause, she asked the question I'd been expecting. "Did you ever love me?" I stared at her for a moment, memories flickering through my mind. Our first date, our wedding, the promises we made when everything still felt possible. "I did," I said simply, "with everything I had. But you took that love and used it as leverage. You made me feel like less than I am. And when you humiliated me that night, something inside me broke, and I don't think it can ever be fixed." Her face crumpled. "Please, can we start over?" I stood up. "Start over? You don't start over by pretending it never happened. You start over by learning who you are without the lies. Maybe you should try that." I walked away before she could reply. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just left quietly, because sometimes silence hits harder than shouting. Days turned into weeks. Her name faded from the headlines, replaced by newer scandals. She moved out of the company apartment, too ashamed to face her old colleagues. I heard she tried applying elsewhere, but the industry remembered. Reputations are hard to rebuild when they fall from that high. As for me, I started to rebuild my own life. I joined a small design firm, one that valued integrity over image. My work began to speak for itself. For the first time in years, I felt seen not as someone's husband, but as myself. And yet, part of me still felt hollow. Revenge had satisfied my anger, but it hadn't healed the wound. Late at night I would think about her, not with hate, but with something quieter. Pity, maybe, or closure. Then one evening, I got a call. It was her. "Please," she said through tears, "can we meet just one last time?" Something in her voice told me this wasn't about apologies. It was about desperation. She needed to be heard. And despite everything, a part of me still wanted to listen, if only to end it properly. We met at a small cafe outside town. She looked different. Tired, broken, stripped of everything that once made her glow. "They fired me," she said softly. "The investigation proved everything. I lost everything." I nodded. "I know." She looked up, her eyes red. "Do you hate me?" I sighed. "No. Hating you would mean you still have power over me. I've just outgrown the pain you caused." She swallowed hard, then whispered, "I miss the person I used to be. With you." I looked at her for a long time. "Then maybe," I said quietly, "you should find her again, without pretending." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she nodded slowly. There was nothing left to say. As I left the cafe, I realized something powerful. Revenge doesn't give you peace. Truth does. And I had finally told mine. But what I didn't know was that her story wasn't over yet. And soon a new secret would surface, one that would test everything I thought I understood about justice, love, and betrayal. 3 months passed. My life had finally started to feel normal again, or at least something close to it. I had new routines, new peace, and a sense of quiet strength that came from surviving something that nearly broke me. But peace is a fragile thing. And just when you start to believe it's permanent, life has a way of shaking the ground beneath you again. It started with a letter. No sender's name, just my address, handwritten neatly on the front. I almost threw it away, thinking it was another meaningless envelope. But some quiet instinct, made me open it. Inside was a single photograph. It was of my wife, sitting in a restaurant, laughing, with him, the man who had always lingered near her at the office, the one I had suspected once but never had proof against. His hand was on hers, and she was smiling the same way she used to smile at me before everything went wrong. But that wasn't what broke me. What broke me was the note attached to the photo. Just one sentence, written in her handwriting. "You were right about everything." My chest tightened. I didn't know what she meant. Was it an apology? A confession? A taunt? The words felt like a ghost reaching out from the past. I tried to ignore it, but curiosity eats at peace like rust. That night, I did something I promised myself I wouldn't. I looked her up again. Her social media was gone. Her LinkedIn, deleted. No new posts, no updates, no sign of a job or a new life. She had vanished. But then a message popped up on my email. Unknown sender. Subject: You should know the truth. Inside was a file, an audio recording. My hand trembled as I clicked play. Her voice filled the room. Tired, fragile, honest. If you're hearing this, it means I couldn't fix it. I tried to fight the investigation, but there was more to it than you knew. I wasn't the only one falsifying numbers. There were people above me, people who used me as a scapegoat. I took the blame because I thought I could protect them, but I was wrong. They used me. They erased everything. She took a shaky breath before continuing. You were right to expose me. I deserved it. But you also need to know, I didn't steal the money. I covered for someone who did, someone powerful enough to make sure no one believed me. When I laughed at you that night, it wasn't pride. It was fear. I was trying to survive in a world that would crushed both of us if it knew the truth. The recording ended with silence. Then, a faint sob. My hands were shaking. For months I had painted her as the villain of my story, the one who destroyed me for her own ego. But now, for the first time, I saw something else. A woman cornered, scared, pretending to be powerful so she wouldn't collapse under the weight of her own secrets. The next morning, I drove to her old office building. It had a different name now. The company had rebranded after the scandal. A security guard stopped me at the door, but when I told him my name, he sighed. You're her husband? He asked quietly. Ex-husband, I corrected. Why? He looked around, lowered his voice, and said, She came here 2 weeks ago, tried to speak to one of the directors. They had her escorted out. She looked lost. Do you know where she went? He hesitated. There's a small motel 2 blocks down. I've seen her walking there sometimes. That's all I know. I thanked him and left. Part of me didn't want to go. Part of me screamed that this wasn't my problem anymore. But curiosity, and something deeper, something human, pulled me toward that motel. When I found her, she was sitting outside on the steps, staring at nothing. She looked thinner, older, but when she saw me, she froze. You got my message, she said quietly. I nodded. Why send it now? She shrugged weakly. Because you deserve the truth. I know what I did to you. I know I can't fix it. But I couldn't live with you believing I was just cruel. Her voice cracked, and I could see the exhaustion written all over her face. She wasn't the arrogant woman I once knew. She was just human, broken in all the ways I had once been. I sat beside her in silence. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, You hurt me more than anyone ever could. But hearing this, it doesn't make me hate you. It just makes me sad. She nodded slowly. That's fair. I hesitated, then asked, Were you really protecting someone? She turned to me, her eyes hollow. Yes. But it doesn't matter now. They made sure no one would believe me. I took the fall, and they walked away untouched. That's the world I chose. The same world that made me forget who I was with you. I wanted to be angry again. I wanted to shout, to demand names, to push her to fight back. But she looked so tired, like someone who'd already fought and lost every battle that mattered. Instead, I said softly, You can still start over. She smiled faintly. Maybe, but sometimes starting over means accepting the end. I didn't know it then, but those would be her last words to me. 2 days later, I got the call. She had been found in her motel room, an empty bottle beside her bed, the same photo I'd received resting on the table. I didn't cry at first. I just sat in silence. listening to the world outside my window. The wind, the cars, the faint hum of life moving on. And then it hit me. Grief, guilt, and a strange kind of peace. I had won the battle, but in the end, we both lost the war.